Good morning, everyone. It's the Mental Advocate here with your daily dose of serotonin. Today we're talking about the 5 lies that depression told me. Now, it's a little bit heavier of a topic, but if you're seeking help here, please just stick around while we unpack some things and we can get you the hope and help that you need. So, let's get started. And just a quick PSA so we can be transparent. I'm not a licensed mental health counselor or a trained therapist. Now, there are some helpful links at the end of this video, so be sure to stick around to check those out if you need help right now to connect you to a live crisis team or some phone numbers and links to help you get started. I'm just a real guy who wants to open the door for conversations and the hard discussions that we all need to have to seek hope and help for each other because we all deserve it. Also, in this video and my next 2 videos, we'll be reading through a blog post by Jensen, who is an amazing author and mental health advocate. She's written some amazing stuff, including some stuff for my favorite charity, To Write Love on Her Arms. So feel free to check her out on the Twilio website, and there'll be some links to her stuff down below in the description as well. Now, for this video, I just want to read through her blog post, kind of see what she was saying about it, and we'll give commentary along the way. So I'll be reading off of that. Feel free to go on the website, read along as well. And here's the blog post, you guys. It can be found at twloha.com/blog. So it starts off by her saying, I was not depressed. I couldn't be. I had never self-harmed. I had never ideated on suicide. I had never felt the need to seek professional help for those low days or weeks or months. I wasn't like the people I saw on TVs or movies or in books who were depressed. People I knew with clinical depression sought treatment and were engaged in destructive activities or couldn't get out of bed in the morning or function on a day-to-day basis. I did everything with my whole heart, and depression always seemed to me to be like an all-over weight, impossible to live with. I wasn't like that. Now, I think it's really fascinating that she starts with this kind of prologue. It kind of gives their insight to her journey as a person, realizing that she has depression. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how bad it is for ourselves, not until it's too late, but until we hear it from somebody else. And I think that's a really good way to start, is acknowledging that we might know that we have a problem, but we might not know what the actual issue is. And I think it's really powerful of her to start that wonder of, no, it can't be me. It doesn't look like that for me. And it's a really just meaningful way for her to describe what she was going through at the time. And it's a good way to put ourselves into her shoes of how she was feeling. Now, number 1, the first split in her blog post is, the first lie that depression told me was I don't have depression. And that's an interesting statement. And again, it's kind of going off of the idea that we're afraid of the terminology. We're afraid to label ourselves as depressed, and we don't really understand what that means always for ourselves. So the first section starts off, because I could get up in the morning, because I could take a shower and do my makeup and hair, because I could sit down in my office at home and put in a day's worth of work, because I could follow the routine and day in and day out, my depression told me it wasn't a big deal. I spend all my free time sleeping. Depression lied about it being relaxing, recovering, and restful. Working takes a lot of energy. It wasn't an avoidance tactic or an unhealthy coping mechanism. Going through the performance of each day drained me, but it was ignoring depression that really wore me out. Now, this really hits home for me. Growing up as a child, I slept a lot. I always boil it down to I was tired from school. I was tired from sports I was doing. I was tired of extracurricular activities. I was tired of my friends. I slept a lot growing up as a kid. And I still do occasionally get home from work and nap. But it's different now. I went through stages when I was diagnosed where I knew that sleeping wasn't just the wear and tear of the day. It was really a deeper level of draining energy. And that's what depression does. It drains our energy. It makes us not excited to do anything. It drains our passion. It drains our excitement. And I think it's really interesting that she starts it off like this, that the first lie that depression told me is I don't have it. Because depression itself isn't going to want to turn the mirror on itself. And to start that way is really strong to me. It really connects with me. And again, I'm going to have a 5-part series about this coming out in the next few weeks, and that's going to break down each one of these lies. And I'm going to relate my own experience to it, as well as give deeper insight to how we can cope with each individual lie here. So stick with me next few weeks, but we'll move on to the next lie in her story, which is the second lie depression told me was that things were okay if I maintained control. So she goes on to say, by obsessively watching my food intake and making sure I ate only the healthiest meals, by ensuring I worked out daily, by spending an hour with a therapy light in the darkest mornings of winter, I would pull through my temporary sensual blues. If I added in a half hour of yoga or a few minutes of mind relaxation techniques when I really felt bad, I could relax and avoid unpleasant thoughts. But being restrictive negatively impacted my physical and mental health. Insisting on controlling every aspect of my life denied me peace and balance, and it made the depression worse, which is exactly what depression wants. Again, super powerful. It's a good example of how we can let depression win through our everyday life of just living. It gives a falsehood of what depressed people don't look like. And she's on a podcast too with To Write Love on Her Arms, where she kind of dives into that a bit more. We don't all look perfect on the inside. We might look perfect on the outside. We might look like we have all of our stuff together from an outside perspective, but when you really look internally, we don't feel right. And depression is all about that, right, guys? It is about not feeling right. It's not about being sad all the time. It's not about having no energy even. It's about not feeling right. There is something wrong and we don't know what that is. So her third lie that she writes about is, the third lie depression told me was that I wasn't good enough. How many times have we heard that in life? But here's her longest section, so I'm just going to blow through it for you guys. Again, if you're reading at home, feel free to read along during this. But I wasn't a good enough wife. I wasn't a good enough friend. I wasn't a good enough daughter, granddaughter, niece, or coworker. The critical things people said to me or about me, the mean things they wrote, those that were the truest parts of who I was. The niceties, the compliments, and the solid, unwavering support of those who have always had my back were all instances of temporary kindness. With I was and could only be an obligation. Depression told me people I know loved and cared about me didn't. The things that I thought were true and safe were anything but, and I needed to try harder to be better or retreat altogether. The crushing insecurity depression wrought upon my thinking led to an out-of-character behavior and the need for constant reassurance from those whom I was closest to. The insecurity also led me to building up giant walls and demanding space from others who cared about me and sometimes needed me to be there. At times, the insecurity depression gave to doing things in tandem, demanding reassurance while not offering the same back, or worse, believing those reassurances were just there so that I would offer something back, even though I believed I had nothing worth offering to anybody. So again, I just want to unpack this a little bit. We'll get more in depth. This will be my third video that I go to on the subject in the coming weeks, but how many times have we told that? I think this is probably the most relatable lie out of the 5 that we'll encounter, that depression tells me that I'm not good enough. We're a society of self-deprecation. We've almost normalized the idea of feeling bad about ourselves to a point where it's unhealthy to not talk about it. A lot of times comedians will make jokes about it. We'll hear it from our friends and family of, oh, I'm not good enough at this, I'm not good enough at this. And sometimes it's for attention seeking, other times it's for seeking help, and other times it's just comments that we make that we don't think about any day. And that is a lie that we need to stop telling ourselves, that we are not good enough. We are a culture of not being good enough for anything or anyone, and it's because our standards and precedent are up to here. And we demand perfection from ourselves, and we demand perfection from each other at some points. But it's not true. And again, we'll get more into this later. Let's continue on. The 4th lie depression told me was I didn't suffer from anxiety. She goes on to write in this section, I didn't have a real problem. I had a house, friends, a job, a family. Real anxiety involved trauma. Real anxiety involved fears outside of the things that I had complete and utter control over, because I could control everything, remember? Depression told me the anxieties I had were all made up, even as it fueled the feelings and demanded behavior that exacerbated my anxiety. The truth is that anxiety fueled my depression that lied to me. Depression thrived on my low-grade anxieties, helping them grow, which in turn made my depression worse. Depression and anxiety weave together for me like a strand of DNA. They twist around and twist around, rooted and connected to each other. Now, how true is that? Now, I feel like we've come a long way to where we acknowledge that anxiety and depression do exist. And a lot of times I think people would speculate that they go hand in hand. That wasn't the case 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago isn't heard of. Who has anxiety? You're just stressed out about work. Get over it. Deal with it. I feel like this is a good lie that we're being able to cope with now as a society, but still a cultural thing where, because everyone has anxiety, now it's almost its own niche, or it doesn't get the attention it deserves because everybody has anxiety. But really, anxiety is a great, great best friend to depression. It just is going to spike everything that we know is true about our depression, and it's going to anchor us in that negativity. It's going to help ground us in the wrong things. And again, for myself, I know that I have both. I would say I have more anxiety than depression, especially at this phase of my life, but they do weave together so perfectly. Now, it is possible to have anxiety or depression without having one or the other, but a lot of times they are diagnosed together because they do go hand in hand so perfectly. Don't be afraid if you suffer from anxiety. It's okay if you're not professionally diagnosed. It's okay. It's okay to feel the way you do. Just know that there is help and hope out there. And that brings us to our fifth lie. And she writes, the fifth lie depression told me was that it wasn't bad enough. And I'm going to take a break there for a second, because this screams so true to me and my story. And I relate so much to it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can too. We tell ourselves that we haven't experienced enough trauma. And I know I'm getting ahead of it before I even read into what she wrote about it, but I see this so often, reflecting my own life, my friend's life, my family's life. A lot of times we tell ourselves that we haven't experienced that many bad things, so I can't say I have depression. I don't deserve to say I have depression when I see someone over here suffering more than I do. And that is comparing. And that is not fair to ourselves to put us on this pedestal where we see others. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's read into it. Sorry, depression told me getting out of bed in the morning meant I was functioning. That turning in work on time, sometimes really great work that showcased my sharpest thinking skills, meant I didn't have a miserable, self-flagellating, relentless thoughts circulating through my head. Depression told me sleeping my afternoons away was fine, even restorative rather than a part of a dangerous cycle. Depression told me that a near constant exhaustion came from pushing myself too hard on projects I've taken on, not from being up half the night because I couldn't shut off the voices or thoughts in my head, because I had already slept 8 or 10 hours that day, because I wasn't eating, and because I was working out too much. Depression doesn't present one specific way. It doesn't feel one specific way. It doesn't function one specific way, but it will insist that it does, encouraging you with lie after lie after lie to explain every way real signs and symptoms of its existence, which only causes more hurt and pain. Finally, being able to untangle those lies and turn them into the truth of the situation that I suffered from depression was like discovering a whole new, different world, a healthier world where I did not have to be my depression and my depression did not have to be me. The first truth I told depression was that it existed, but it does not define me. And that's where she ends it. There's a lot to read into there, which again, I'll go more into depth on that in my next few videos. Really, guys, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel bad, even if it's not as bad as the next person. It's okay to tell somebody about the hurt and the struggle and the pain you're going through just because they've experienced pain and suffering in their life too. We're only going to be made stronger in our foundation through our shared experiences rather than dividing ourselves. If you overextend yourself and you're always the person who is there for somebody else but not there for yourself, you are going to collapse and fail yourself. And then you're not going to help anybody. So we'll end it there. Again, this blog post is by Jensen. You'll find the link in the description down below. But I really encourage you guys to look up her writing, her work, and other resources out there to help yourselves overcome the depression, anxiety that you're fighting. We're all in this together. It's a hard time in the world right now. I want to be there for you guys. I want you guys to be there for me. Let's build this community strong. Spread the word. Spread some love. And let's all help each other overcome this. And we'll end it there. Thanks again for listening and tuning in and sticking with it. If you have any comments to add to today's conversation, please leave a comment in the section below. Feel free to subscribe. It really helps out my channel so I can start doing this full time to help you guys, to help myself, and so we can all help each other. I would really appreciate any support. Hit that like button. I also stream live on Twitch every now and again with positive gameplay as well as mental health chats. So that'll be twitch.tv/ILovePieGuy. But thank you everyone for stopping in, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.